Hello, and welcome to an episode of Todd Talks. When Todd Talks, people listen. We've all lost something, and I've seen what loss can do to people. But if we gave up every time we lost, then we would never be able to move forward. Hopefully. Yes, I was quoting there. You're welcome. I got some references for today's episode because I wanted to make sure I did some things right. So, today, we are on... Sorry, saying that for later. We are on a very special episode of Todd Talk because we are talking about the upcoming 200th episode of Death Battle. 200 episodes. I know that the Death Battle team is trying its best to not overblow things, but we'll do it for them. 200 is an accomplishment. Who thought that was... Remember, this series is supposed to be 25 episodes, ending with the original Goku versus Superman. That was the intentional plan. And then they kind of got huge and now we can keep doing this. And now, thanks to us, we have helped them reach 200 episodes. And this will be a worthy fight because it is Ruby Rose from Ruby versus Maka Albarn from Soul Eater. And this matchup is special, not just because of the epic ladies involved, but because this was the personal request of Ruby creator Montium. Rest in peace. He personally asked the Death Battle team to do this, and they waited for a long time for obvious reasons. And I'm really sorry about the row. I'm still trying to make this work. And they obviously waited because, Ruby still had a story going on. She needed, her natural power-ups to happen, and she never got a Super Saiyan form, but, you take what you can get. And now, with Season 10 well ways away, and they decided, hey, we'll do this in the Kickstarter, and this is indeed the right time. So, let's get started with Ruby Rose. The world of Remnant is crazy. Oh, wait, that was Yang's opening. The world of Remnant is one of fairy tales. Both good, bad, and indifferent. And for the longest time, one Ruby Rose was enamored with the profession, yes, it is a profession, known as huntsmen or huntresses. These were the skilled warriors that would go out and defeat the monsters of the realm of Remnant, known as Grimm, with 2 M's. And if it was just Grimm, it'd be like, oh, you're so grim. No, but it's Grimm. Rawr. And she was enamored with this, not the least of which was because her father, her mother, her uncle, and her aunt were they were all part of a famed huntress team called Stark, STRQ. And so she knew just how great they could be, and she had a very, let's call it, romanticized version of it. Not unlike how some people in, say, the 1910s and the 1940s had a romanticized version of war, because they were like, oh, but the heroic stories that we grew up on of the brave men and women who went out to fight for freedom and everything. That was Ruby. And then she found out what war was really like. But we'll get to that. So she was training at the, it's called the Junior Academy, Signal, where her father, Tylan? It's Ty. I know it's Ty for short. I can't remember his full name, sorry. But she was training there when one day she just happened to be in a dust store that got robbed. Are you robbing me? Yeah. Yeah. So she foiled the robbery basically on her own. And even though she didn't realize it at the time, she would meet her forever rival in Cinderfall. And her actions in that robbery led her to meeting a man by the name of Ozpin, who happened to be the headmaster of Beacon Academy. And upon seeing her eyes and realizing her skill, he thought, I'm just gonna bring you to Beacon, which was fortuitous for her because her sister Yang Xiaolong, who does not beat Tifa, we all accept that now, okay? Can we move on? It was still a good fight though, but her sister Yang was going, and then she would meet her forever friends in Weiss Schnee and Blake Belladonna, and together they would form Team Ruby with a W. And this would start their journey across numerous chapters, 9 so far, not including spin-offs, and so many spin-offs. Spin-offs and video games. Lots of video games. I've honestly never played them, though. Some of them just didn't look quality, and then the ones that were, like, Rooster Teeth approved, like, was it Arrowfall? Just didn't do it for me, but it's fine. But yes, throughout her journey, Ruby was the bright-eyed, we can do this, let's work together, we're gonna push through personality, right? She was, in many ways, the little sister, literally and figuratively, to everyone in the group. And she was there to be that boundless ball of energy, that one is like, you know, never say die attitude, you know, we're going to punch the wall until it breaks, that kind of person. And in fact, that's actually an interesting quote I wanted to point out. Lindsay Jones, who is Ruby's voice actress, said, Ruby's mentality is selfless, but that means she's not dealing with her own issues. Compartmentalizing and internalizing her grief is what might eventually destroy her. So that's more prophetic than probably even she realized. I don't know when she made the quote, but that was more prophetic than she probably realized, because while Ruby is always, you know, the can-do attitude, she hurts a lot. All right. And even from like the beginning days of her time at at Beacon, she was a leader, but not always the most perceptive person or friend. Even with Blake and Weiss, I'm gonna say Schnee. She is a Schnee. Schnees. She was very clingy to Yang, because Yang was basically the only person she knew. Remember, she got advanced 2 years early to Beacon. And because of that, she had some social and anxiety that she had to deal with across many things. And even when she met with Team Juniper, and then eventually her soon-to-be BFF-ish, Penny, she still had to adapt herself to certain expectations and she does not know how to act with certain other people, like when she met Winter Schnee and was very over the top, how do you do, you know, like that kind of thing. Ruby appear very average. They had some great bang. I don't get the hate that Ruby got over certain seasons. I thought it was all quality. You know, lesser seasons exist, but that's just natural in a show like this. And why is my room so white? So she did her best to always put herself last, for lack of a better term. It's like she would always help everybody else, which she loved to do. But then when she dealt with herself and her own problems, including the missing or death of her own mother, which we still never got an answer for. Where is that? We got to get that answer in chapter 10. Whenever that arrives. You know, she wouldn't talk about it very much, even with her own father or her sister and Yang. So over time, Ruby's vision of the world would change. And not entirely for the better at times. At first, she was, again, you know, just a huntress in training. She accepted the student role. And when she was named leader of Team Ruby, much to the surprise of everybody else, looking at you, Weiss, she willingly put herself to work so that she could figure out the best way to be a leader, both in terms of encouraging her team, but also working with their dynamics, understanding their backstories, especially with Weiss and Blake, who obviously were very different people, and Faunus, and helping them become the team that would beat any obstacle. And for the first 3 volumes, it seemed like we would have that traditional arc of the traditional anime arc of, you know, they lose the small battles, but they win the big ones, and, you know, power, friendship, positivity, we're gonna save the day. Then the end of volume 3 happens, and we go, oh fuck, you know, and that's when Ruby with W got really dark, because Beacon fell, Pyrrha died. Yes, she's dead. Sorry, Ruby Chibi. She's dead. Yang got maimed, lost her arm. Was it this one? Was it that one? I think it was the left one. It's been a while. Yang lost her arm. Blake fled. Weiss was basically forcibly taken back to Atlas by her father, who was a dick and deserved to die. And Ruby had to pick up the pieces on her own with the remnants of Team Juniper. And as time went on, and she kept fighting and she kept struggling, even when the winds came, she still lost. You know, we saw the Mantle Academy falling. We saw what happened with Atlas. She was literally with the military, with Ironwood, and she was like giving him the lead because, like, okay, well, he has to know better. You know, he's better than Ozpin. He's not lying to us, except he was. And things, and then she had to keep taking these really hard decisions and making these hard choices that were hurting her and crippling her internally. And by the time we got to chapter 9 with Ever After, she broke. She was depressed. She lashed out at everybody. And when she had the opportunity to get better via the blacksmith, she almost took it. Because her self-doubt, her grief, the pain of it all, of seeing the world over and over and over again failing, both literally and failing her, she wondered if she could do it. There's a lot of maturity there, and we'll get to a certain line in a little bit, but even with that, she was able to break through, be who she needed to be, and with her friends by her side, they were able to escape the Ever After and return to the world and see that her message, a message that she sent in hope that she could unite the world against Salem, the literal witch that's been cursing things since the early times of the gods. Don't get me started. Salem cannot be in death battle. Like, literally, Salem literally cannot be in death battle because of who she is. and we have to get to the end of Ruby to even think about that. But anyway, so Ruby is that person who can will her friends and herself and her world to change things because it is simply the right thing to do, and she's gonna do it. We're just gonna have to wait for her to actually do it. Now, before we get to her opponent, obviously I gotta talk about her weapon, the Crescent Rose. Yes, this was actually modeled after her uncle, Crow, who also had a scythe. And she is a weapon freak. She loves weapons. She even says she likes weapons more than people at times. And I don't blame her. One day my walls will be adorned with my weapons that I had in my old apartment. And she kind of went a little overboard with Crescent Rose. It's huge. It's bigger than her. Okay? But you'd think that, okay, that's going to weigh her down. Not really. She's learned through Signal and her various adventures at Beacon to adapt her fighting style and skill so that she can wield it masterfully. She's a beast with this weapon. While it's fair to say she's not the best fighter in Team Ruby, I'd honestly say that was Blake or Yang, if I'm being honest. Weiss is the best with glyphs because that's literally her fighting style. But Ruby is no slouch, especially with her semblance, Petal Burst. It allows her to transform her body and certain other things she's attached to, including Crescent Rose, into basically formless petals that can weave through the air at her own discretion. She's been dubbed massless by Penny in this form. Not sure how canon that is, but she never gets hurt in this form. Like, no one attacks the petals, then she's got cuts all over her body. All right, she uses this to go in literally any direction she wants. She even defies gravity in this form. She was falling down at one point, used Petal Burst to go right back up and get behind Neapolitan, and another eternal rival of hers, and do a counter attack. She's done it multiple times over. She can even carry other people in this form and go though she cannot phase through objects, she can weave and go through things that theoretically really shouldn't be able to go through, including like really tiny spaces or do, you know, abrupt right turns and so on and so forth. I saw my screen go. There you go. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. What do I have to do? It's like hold it right here. I will figure this out one day. But the other thing here is that it's not just a side. It's also a gun. And they love that line. But yes, Crescent Rose is also a gun. It is a long-range sniper rifle, though she can obviously fire bullets up close. She is an expert marksman with this thing. She's hit Grimm and people from long distances, and with the various dust that she can use, she can power up her weapon to do even more damage and help her adjust things mid-flight, like, you know, shooting her. You ever watch A-Team where they were aiming the tank with the barrel? Firing, that's what she can do with her gun, except much more precision, obviously. Her scythe is no joke, and it's been updated multiple times, including in Atlas when she worked with Ironwood and became an official, fully fledged huntress. And when in Ever After, when she came out with Crescent Rose in like its purest form, I guess you could say. But yeah, she is no joke. She's beaten Neapolitan, she's beaten Cinder Falls, she's beaten numerous Grimm of all shapes and sizes, including massive Nevermores in her first fight at Beacon with Team Ruby, including taking one while it was held in her side and went upwards up a cliff. She's no joke. Now, she's not the best hand-to-hand fighter. It's been proven multiple times over that when she doesn't have Crescent Rose, she's not as skilled as Yang in any stretch of the imagination. However, she has beaten people in hand-to-hand combat and has trained herself to be better over time, including training with Oscar and certain others. So she's not defenseless, but when she needs her scythe to do the most damage, and even with her aura, which is like her protective shield around her, it has a limit. And if it breaks, she is absolutely capable of death, as we've seen with numerous hunters that have died, such as Pyranikos. So yeah, she's still very good, though, and she's very hard to beat. And you almost have to wonder how. You know? Like, after 9 chapters of all the ups and downs, you have to wonder how Ruby can keep going. She saw her sister get maimed. Her friends have basically betrayed her. Her mentors have betrayed her or have lied to her, left her wanting more. She still doesn't know the truth about her mother. She had an existential crisis in a fairy tale world, and yet she chose herself and kept going. How was she able to do that? Well, maybe that girl is enough. And now we will go to the world of Soul Eater, which is freaking crazy. I always enjoy learning about anime that I've never personally partaken in, and seeing just how far things go in it. I was just like, they did what in Soul Eater? They did what? Anyway, in the world of Soul Eater, there are certain forces that threaten the very existence of reality itself. And the biggest one is a Kinshin, which is like dark gods that can destroy everything. And so a group of beings known as Meisters were trained to help ensure that another Kinshin would not exist. All right? And one of them was the daughter of a legendary Meister named Spirit, and his daughter was Maka Albarn. And boy, was she going to be on an interesting journey. It took me like all of 2 paragraphs to understand why she was fighting Ruby Rose outside of the whole, there were scythe wielders in anime shows. Yes, Ruby is an anime. American anime. But Maka Albarn was the straight A, brainiac, overachiever kind of girl you met in like junior high and high school. And she wanted to be a Meister for a simple reason, because she hated her father's guts and wanted to get a death scythe, which is an ultimate weapon that would eclipse what his was. By the way, she has a great relationship with her mother, and even says to take after her mother, just like Ruby with Summer. Connection. So After joining the Death Weapon Meister Academy, nailed it, nailed it, she would be paired with a, I never understood. It was like, it's a human weapon? Like humans that transform into weapons? Anyway, it's called Soul. And Soul was her opposite in so many ways. He just wanted to be cool. He didn't really want to do much, but he had a goal of becoming a death weapon, or a death scythe. And Maka was all for that because she wanted one too. And so they chose each other to become a Meister duo and would go out to do various missions for the DWMA. I almost said YMCA. I'm like, that's not right. YMCA. Yes, I am that old. You're welcome. So the problem here is that unlike, say, Ruby, who literally just had her weapon and used it and learned to wield it masterfully, Maka and Maka and Soul were literally two different sides of a very unique coin. And much like how you can't do one thing without another in certain cases, with Maka and Soul, they had to work together to bring out the most of each other. Maka couldn't just swing the scythe that, I keep wanting to say Echo for some reason, for Soul would transform into and be a master, scythe wielder. They had to resonate with one another and wield each other's strengths and overcome their weaknesses to fight and to get the souls that they needed, literal souls, to achieve death scythe. And that was hard because, again, they are very different personalities. Because of her upbringing and her father being a dick, she just hates men. Like, a lot. Like, she thinks they're all pigs, which, fair. But I ain't gonna defend us. I'm not gonna defend us. Are you kidding me? I've seen things, Wiz. I've seen things. Why do you think I'm in this white room? No. Soul would tease Maka constantly because of her personality, the various things she would do or would not do, and so on and so forth. And it didn't help that Maka, personality-wise, was very straightforward and go-getting, but she was very self-deprecating, which clearly means that I am both Ruby and Maka all at the same time. But with Maka, something would go wrong, and then she would blame herself, and then she would apologize to Soul, or she would, Soul would be like, no, it's fine, it doesn't matter, and then she'd be like, oh, but now I'm bringing him down, and not just me, and it's just like, very self-deprecating arc. You hate to see it. And over time, some of their peers, like Sabaki and Blackstar and Death the Kid, would show that they were much greater fighters and more skilled with their own weapons than Maka was with Soul. But that didn't stop her. It never stops a good anime protagonist, because instead they just worked hard, trained together, and found a way to make their souls resonate literally. Soul resonance is one of the abilities that Maka and Soul have, where their souls and energies and their personalities feed off of one another and allow them to do incredible attacks that will allow them to defeat demons, witches, weird cats, and, wait for it, clowns. Yeah, you thought clowns were evil before. Wait till you see what they are in Soul Eater. I will get to that. But because of that, they were able to use incredible attacks that, again, would literally slice them to pieces, even when they were able to destroy mountains or buildings and various other things. So another thing that Maka has going for her is that after a key battle with Krona, you remember them, right? You remember Krona and Ragnarok? Who totally beat Venom and might not be counteracted with all the recent Venom stuff. I honestly don't know. But Maka was able to use Black Blood. I'm not going to dive into what that is. But needless to say, it's a unique power-up that gives her increased power, defense, healing abilities, and more. And when she wields it, she actually transforms her outfit into a black blood dress. And it makes her pretty much impervious to certain types of attacks, including slashing and crushing attacks. And the problem is that in most times, I can't recall if it happened in the end, but kind of makes her loopy. She gets a little erratic, for lack of a better term. But the twist is that she doesn't lose her mind fully. It's madness is a wavelength, all right? And she actually has her own anti-madness wave, or anti-demon, anti-madness wavelength within her that helps her fight certain foes, and that actually makes them fear Maka. It's like, oh, this girl's literally not on our wavelength. So, it all works out in the end. But she can... the madness is a wavelength, but there is courage in madness. Soul actually described this rather beautifully by saying, you fear madness, but madness can give you a will to live. Madness can give you perspective and help you push forward. And Maka's like, that's courage, and I can use that. And so with her courage, she's able to, better use the black blood to power herself up and fight foes like Krona, like Asura, like clowns. Yeah. See, at one point, the clown, a certain clown, literally called the Clown, was emitting a certain kind of soul energy to drive people into madness, including Maka. At one point, she was actually seeing the deaths of her friends because of the madness that was being projected at her. And Soul had to pull Maka into his own soul via their soul resonance and show them through piano playing. I'm not going to judge. That there is beauty within the madness and that you can push through it, and through that they were able to overcome that kind of thing and defeat the clown and defeat things like Arachne, deal serious damage to Asura, defeat Krona a couple times, and so on and so forth. Through this, they were able to get those 99 human souls and one witch soul, as they mentioned in the preview, and achieve death side status. It's still very hard to say. And this is important because that literally leveled them up to the big time. It gave them more power, more speed, even better soul resonance in certain ways, and now they can fly. They can fly. They were able to make angel wings, though not the best ones at first. They were able to make angel wings that were able to go up against foes that had impressive speed blitzing abilities previously, and they were able to outclass them with ease. And the only reason that they didn't defeat that enemy is because they ran away. Eventually, though, there was the War for the Moon, and Maka and Soul had to work together to save Krona, who just wanted a friend. Because, yeah, that was one of the other key abilities, is that she can read souls. Soul perception is what it's called. And she can literally look into souls, detect them from a long distance. Like, at one point, she discovered a Kenshin base on the other side of the world on accident. She scanned the whole world and was like, oh, there it is. Found it. Yeah, go figure. And she could tell, the state of people's souls, their personalities, which one's innocent, which one's corrupt, and so on and so forth. So they used that ability to help save Krona, more or less, and ensure that Asura and the Kenshin would not be resurrected in the world. And with that, the day was saved, and they were able to live in peace. And Maka made a vow to try and show the world the courage that was needed so that when Krona returned, she would be able to see it and know that there was a place waiting for her. So nice. So isn't it nice when we actually have an ending to an anime? Dang it, Rooster Teeth. All right, we are 29 minutes in. Okay, it happens. It happens. So who wins in a fight between Ruby and Maka? Now, there were some questions on the DB Discord that I wish to address, and there are some things I'm sure some people are curious about in regards to how certain abilities scale. First of all, let's talk DC scaling. Yes, Ruby and the crew have crossed over with DC Comics multiple times. In fact, they crossed over comic-wise and animated movie-wise twice, in fact. Here's the problem. In the first RWBY movie, I don't know, I can't speak for the comic, but I'm pretty sure that was non-canon. In the first movie, they weren't in Remnant. They were in a digital version of Remnant. And the Justice League, their minds are put into the virtual world, and their abilities for the Justice League were nerfed. The second time, Ruby and the crew went to the actual DC universe, or a version of it, obviously. And through that, they gained special abilities and did not have access to their aura or semblances. They had to adapt to different abilities that they had, if they had any at all. Weiss didn't have any, famously. So, yes, Ruby is technically besties with Superman. Also, Jean x Jessica forever. Like, that was an absolutely adorable relationship, and I hate that they didn't follow up on it in this sequel. How dare you! They were really good together. But no, even though she's besties with Superman, she does not get DC scaling. Not to mention, in that movie, it's really hard to tell at times just how strong Superman, Wonder Woman, and all of them were, because they were getting overwhelmed by supercharged Grimm that literally could not die or something like that. So, no DC scaling. Sorry. Number 2, Silver Eyes. I didn't mention this intentionally before. Silver Eyes are a hereditary ability given to a line of warriors from the God of Light. Don't get me started. Ruby gets really tricky with lore. And it's basically a weapon to deter Grimm and Grimm-like entities. And its powers over the course of the series, from the end of Volume 3 when it was first introduced to Volume 9 where it was, I think, used once, has been, let's just say, inconclusive. Here's why. First of all, Ruby is not a master of it. She's had some training with it with a former Silver Eyes user, and even then, it's not easily explained what it does. Like, for example, in the first instance, when Pyrrha died to Cinderfall and Ruby lost it, she petrified a massive wyvern Grimm. Like, it was the size of Beacon, and she petrified it. She also injured Cinderfall, making her lose her eye and her arm, which she would get replaced with a Grimm arm later on. It's never explained why that happened. Because remember, at that point, she was just human. Yes, she had been touched by Salem and by the Grimm, but she wasn't Grimm herself. And then another time when Ruby tried to use the Silver Eyes on Raven, she was uninjured. And then she used it on the Apathy Grimm in one of my favorite episodes, I'm Tired. I'm tired. That was my motto for a while, because it just spoke to me as where I was in life. But she disintegrated them. Like, poof. So, we don't really know. And then other times there were Grimm that were only partially affected by the Silver Eyes blast. Others, like people who were in there, like Raven, who had a maiden power at the time, she wasn't affected by it. It's so inconsistent, and so it's really hard to say what it would do to Maka, even with Black Blood, which obviously is not the same as Grimm. So with that in mind, it's honestly rather easy to say that Maka wins for a few key reasons. First of all, just power. If you remember the Corona video against Venom, they noted that Corona has quite a bit of power. I honestly should have rewatched that segment to see just how powerful she was. But Corona's they had enough power to do a lot of damage both on the world and on the moon. Maka basically beat them. It's not exactly that clear cut, but Maka beat them many times, both pre-final arc and within the final arc, technically. So that would be enough to say that Maka, has more power than Ruby. The second thing to consider here is that when you really think about how Ruby does things, she's not a powerhouse in any meaningful way. She handles Grimm with ease, but Maka handles witches, demons, and clowns that can literally infect your mind. Ruby, in contrast, was almost... She was been defeated by regular dudes from the White Fang because she lost her scythe. She has been defeated cleanly by more experienced soldiers, like ones from Ironwood's crew. She has been overwhelmed by Grimm in the past, and she, because of her mental state, she can sometimes be her own worst enemy, not unlike how Maka is to herself. So, that's not the cleanest of divides. But when... The biggest thing, arguably, is that if Ruby loses Crescent Rose, she only has her semblance, and she has to use it correctly to get back in the fight. Maka and Soul can fight independently of one another, and at one point, Maka even uses her father as a weapon in one of the final arcs, and uses him masterfully while Soul is getting back in the game. And Soul has not only defended Maka from deadly blows in the past, but has fought on his own without her help, including using a high-level Screech attack against, wait for it, Frankenstein, and others to help get out some of the madness that was within him. So they have a lot more going for them. Experience, I'd probably say it's a little bit even, honestly. Their stories take place over a relatively short period of time. I don't know, maybe a year or two. It's hard to read. But, read isn't into it. But, are we at 36? That's fine. So, Maka definitely has a strength advantage. I definitely feel she has a speed advantage, which is weird because that's Ruby's thing. But, no one in Ruby is faster than Light. And I'm not saying Maka is faster than Light, but they have very different ways of doing speeds. Mako is fast on her own, and then with Death Scythe form, with her scythe gaining wings, she can go much faster. And I would say that she would be able to out-blitz Petal Burst. Not to mention, via soul reading, soul perception, she would be able to understand who Ruby is at a very easy level. Finally, and arguably most importantly, is Black Blood. Maka has it. Maka will use it. She had it in the final arc, and so that's canon enough. So she's had it and lost it over the time. Black Blood makes it that you're basically impervious to crushing and slicing and slashing. That's what Ruby does. All right? And you can say, but, it's also a gun. Yes, and that will throw Maka for a loop, especially with certain dust that could harm her or hinder her in certain ways. But between their soul resonance and certain other things, they've been able to overpower things that were meant to cripple them in the past, or defeat stronger enemies, and defeat foes that even the foe thought, no, we can take her, and then she pulls out a fast one and gets the upper hand, or uses her various wavelengths to stymie them so that she can get the upper hand and win. This is basically what Maka does, and she'll see that, okay, Ruby is this kind of personality, she's this kind of fighter, she can do this, this, and this, and then she'll be able to interpret that and use that to her advantage alongside Soul, who's, again, his own mind. And so it's basically two minds against one, and that will give them the edge. So better defense, better stats overall, arguably better weaponry. I will say that Ruby's one main advantage is the fact that her aura will protect her, but again, it's finite. It will not last forever. So that will throw off Maka for a little bit. And Ruby is the weapon versus Maka needing Soul to help her and be in perfect sync. That could complicate things, but it's not like they always get back in sync. That is their thing. They'll start off rough, they'll get back in sync, they'll unlock their power, and then they'll literally chop Ruby to pieces. So yeah, I'm picking Maka Albarn. And with that, I'm in this episode of Todd Talk. Who do you think is going to win between Ruby and Maka? And do you think this will be a worthy episode, not just episode 200, but of Monty himself? Let me know in the comments below. So, I thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I know you were listening, and I'll see you around.